kia ora te whānau, ko kara te whata Maynard tōku ingoa, he uri ahau no Ngāti Parau, whānoa apanui me Ngāti Hine hoki. So kia ora everybody, my name is Kara te whata Maynard. I work as a learning support psychologist for the Ministry of Education. So today we're going to talk about, the section we're going to talk about now is Critical Tiriti Analysis. And that is in relation to the FASD guidelines and the development of those guidelines. So just before we talk about CTA, let's firstly just take a moment to acknowledge Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which was signed in 1840, and that there are 5 parts to this document. There is the preamble, which kind of outlines the purpose of this document: to protect Māori rights in taonga, keep peace and order in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and establish government. And then we have Article 1 regarding Crown responsibilities related to Māori Indigenous rights, so self-determination, rangatiratanga. Article 3, all the rights and responsibilities, so everybody has equal rights and responsibilities in Aotearoa, New Zealand, including people coming into this country. And Article 4, the right to freedom of religion and belief. And Article 4 was verbally presented at Waitangi, and it was included in the document that went around the country for signing. So what we see here is the Critical Tiriti Analysis, which is a framework that was developed by Kame, O'Sullivan and Macrina in 2020. And it's a tool to strengthen and review projects, programs, or policies in relation to Te Tiriti o Waitangi. So it supports organisations to evaluate how guidelines or policies are made, by whom and for which purposes. It looks at the strength of Māori participation in policy making and the extent to which Māori aspirations and expectations are positioned to influence policy decisions. So how are Māori engaged with through this process, and is Māori whakaaro reflected in the guidelines? So the project team used the CTA process prospectively. So a lot of the time it's used at the end of, it's used to look at, how have we, what have we achieved? But in this case, our project team used it prospectively. So the whakapapa, the purpose of this was to ground the development of the diagnostic guidelines for FASD within Te Tiriti o Waitangi. That was the goal. So the Critical Tiriti Analysis approach has 5 phases of analysis. So the first phase is all about orientation. So it looks at, is Te Tiriti o Waitangi referenced? Does it engage with Māori as tangata whenua or Aotearoa rather than as a minority? Does it reflect rangatiratanga, Māori citizenship and health equity? And what is the extent of Māori participation in the guidelines development and authorship? So, is there advisory groups? Is the project membership made up of Māori as well as non-Māori? And do they access relevant health and research literature from a te ao Māori perspective? And has it been reviewed by Māori in the development phase? So that's the first phase, is orientation. Then the next phase number 2, is a closer examination. So what we're looking at here is we're looking within the articles, we're looking at, does the FASD guidelines link with, and does it evidence the 5 aspects of Te Tiriti o Waitangi? So the preamble, so how are Tiriti commitments represented? How have Māori values and expectations informed the development of the FASD guidelines? Ka pai, and ka wanatanga. So is Māori engagement clear? Is it visible throughout? Have Māori practitioners and scholars with particular cultural expertise been included? And how have they been involved in the FASD guideline development? And then further, so that's preamble, ka wanatanga, and then we're also looking at rangatiratanga. So has Māori knowledge, research, oral traditions, is this in the guideline content? And again, it's looking at the depth of the engagement with Maori. And then ōritetanga, so acknowledging that disparity exists and acknowledging the historic and contemporary determinants of health, and then with a real focus on equitable outcomes. Is that part of our FASD guidelines for Aotearoa? Do we acknowledge these things? And wairuatanga as it relates to Article 4. So have Māori distinctly influenced the development of these guidelines? Is there recognition of Māori customs and wairuatanga? Yeah. Are Māori values seen in the FASD guidelines? Ka pai, so that's within the second part, so a deeper dive, if you will. And then the next stage is actually the determination or the ratings. So that's looking at, it's a Likert scale, a 5-point Likert scale, and it's looking at how reflective are the FASD guidelines, the Aotearoa FASD guidelines for, it's rating against Te Tiriti or Waitangi. Is it evident? So is it silent? Is it poor? Is it fair? Is it good? Or is it excellent in terms of how reflective it is of Te Tiriti or Waitangi? And then phase 4 is all about strengthening practice. So it's looking at how could we strengthen our practice? How could we improve upon engagement with Māori, or our reflection of Te Tiriti or Waitangi in the guidelines? And then the final phase, take that process back, and how do you check in with Māori, giving Māori the final word for how the guidelines have been shared. So the lovely Haami Harmer, so he was part of our project team, and this was his role. So he conducted a critical tiriti analysis of our FAC guidelines, and there were 2 points in time that we looked at. So it shows the development stage, and then it also shows at the end. So that was December 2022 and December 2023. So this is the critical tiriti analysis results that Haami worked on in 2022 and 2023. So at the start of the project, the rating scales are as follows. So for kāwanatanga, we were rated as a 3, meaning a fair notion of the emergence, recognition, and acknowledgement, meeting expectation. But by December 2023, we were at a 4, which is good. So we've gone from fair to good. Ka pai? So good with the notion of promise or pledge to meet expectations. And again, you see in rangatira, we've moved from a 2 to a 3. So a 2 is a poor notion of being inactive or underdeveloped, and from there we've improved on that. And Māori final word showed the biggest jump, which was poor, and which is good or notion of the promise or pledge to meet expectations. Ka pai? So then what happens is you get a final score based on the 5 phases. And so December 2022, our score was 11, which puts us in the Mauri piki range. And I'll explain those shortly. And then by the end of December 2023, we were in Mauri oho. So this slide here talks about the recommendations and how in the future we could move to a state of Mauri ora. So when we first began the guidelines in December 2022, we were rated as Mauri piki. And then by the end of the guidelines in December 2023, we were at Mauri oho. And to get to Mauri ora, these are the things that Haami identified would be important moving forward. A full copy of this is on the website alongside whakakotahitanga, the FASD guidelines. So he said that the Ministry of Health would need to fully honour its responsibilities to reduce the inequitable harm from alcohol for Māori, reset the levers that it has in its control, influencing other ministries to do the same, advocate for restrictions in the sale and or at the very least advertising and education about the impact of exposure prenatally to the unborn child, Commit to providing training and cultural supervision to all practitioners who will utilise the guidelines to ensure cultural competency, clinical and cultural competency of all practitioners. Commit to funding those with the FASD diagnosis at the same levels as those with other diagnoses, and commit to engaging in a consultation process with iwi and hapu regarding FASD. And finally, commit to reviewing the guideline every 3 years. Unfortunately, Haami wasn't able to present the section himself, and I hope that I've in some way done it justice. What I want to say is a big mihi from the project team to Haami Harmer for taking a CTA approach and helping us to ensure that these guidelines fit with and recognise and acknowledge and embody Te Tiriti o Waitangi.